Hey there, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be showing you how I made this hot spring from Ghost of Yotei. The hot springs in the Ghost games serve as a way to increase your health. There's a few of them scattered between each region in the games, and seeking them out is basically required if you don't want to get one shot in the late game. They made an appearance in both games, and there was a particular reward if you managed to visit all of them, which was arguably the best armor in the game. If you know, you know. I'm doing something slightly different for this diorama. I'm using a frame for the base as opposed to just whatever the base happens to be made of. Using a piece of baking paper as a template, I cut out a piece of XPS foam to size. It ended up being a little bit too short lengthways, but that's okay. I shaved the sides down so that it kind of meets the edge of the frame, and then pull the foam out of the frame so I can work on it. I then start digging a hole in the foam. This is where the resin will be poured into later on. Once I was happy with how deep the hole was, I start surrounding the hole with large and small-ish rocks, all of which were also made out of foam. Then, as is customary on this channel, the rocks receive a thick layer of modelling paste, which is then stippled with a sponge to make it look more like rock, and then everything is primed white. I then painted everything in a series of washes. I know, very different to what I usually do. I started with a yellow wash, then a red wash. These were kind of just splotched onto the white to add some variation. Then everything received a black wash, and then a brown wash, and then a light brown dry brush. This is a technique I first saw on Scratch Bashing's channel. I add a line of yellow around where I want the water to sit. I believe this is a layer of sulfur, from where the water has kind of rested over the years. I don't know, I'm not a geologist. Time to move on to the details, starting with this big sponge. I cut off a chunk of the sponge, and then start picking it apart. I quickly switched to the tweezers for this, because my hands were not going to survive. Then, taking those little bits of sponge, I mixed them with just the most obnoxious red you've ever seen. I don't think the video is going to do it justice, and I'm going to be color correcting this into Oblivion so that you can see it. I then set those out onto a piece of baking paper to dry, something I picked up from Studson's studio for making my own foam foliage. I then turn my attention to the tree, which I make out of several wires twisted together, and then about halfway down I split them into two separate branches, something I first saw on North of the Borders channel. I paint the tree dark brown, and make sure to give it a matte varnish, just to protect the paint, and start gluing the foliage to the tree. The tree then gets glued onto the base, which is then covered in PVA glue and then model grass. I mix up some resin with a little bit of blue and a little bit of white, and then begin pouring it into the hole layer by layer. This took a very long time, but eventually I was able to fill it up. I then cover the resin in a few layers of gloss varnish to help it look more like water. I then start assembling the various wood details such as the little platform and the fence, and those get stained a slightly darker brown. I then turn my attention to the clay details, such as the lights made out of a piece of bamboo cut diagonally. I added some yellow paint later for a bit of extra detail, as well as the stone light thing, and the bucket, which are also painted brown and then dry brushed accordingly. From there it's just a case of gluing all these bits and pieces in place. The last step being to glue the diorama into the frame. And with that, it's finished. Thank you for watching. I honestly don't have too much to say at the end of this video. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, have a good one.